Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Today, we dive into the growing crisis among American boys and young men. From classrooms to the workplace to dating and marriage and beyond, they are falling behind, becoming less ambitious, less resilient, and many lacking an overall sense of purpose. There are many reasons why: changes in education, what they eat, the fear of AI, the addiction to it, and porn, to name just a few. On the show today, a man who's got some real answers on what's happening with our young men, Dr. Leonard Sachs. He has been researching this issue for decades. He is a practicing physician, psychologist, and best-selling author, and he is the author of books like Why Gender Matters. Oh, subversive. It does. The Collapse of Parenting. And every time he's on the show, we get great feedback from our audience wanting more. Today, he is with me in person here in the Red Studio to talk about his new book, an update on his bestseller from nearly 20 years ago. It's called Boys Adrift: The 6 Factors Driving the Growing Epidemic of Unmotivated Boys and Underachieving Young Men. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Feeling sluggish, bloated, not quite like yourself? Life constantly bombards us with silent threats: processed foods, artificial light, nonstop stress, all of which can disrupt gut health, drain energy, and weaken immune health. When that happens, it's not that your body is broken, it's that it might be missing the right inputs. That's why I want to tell you about Armra Colostrum. It's packed with more than 400 bioactive nutrients that they say can work at a foundational level to fortify gut health, support immune health, fuel recovery, and promote whole body vitality. Strong gut integrity can support metabolism, skin and hair health, and even performance and recovery, which is why colostrum has long been valued by some elite athletes as well. If you are looking to take back control of your health from the inside out, consider Armra, and they have a special deal for you. Go to armra.com/Megyn or just enter Megyn, and that will get you 30% off your first subscription order. That's a great deal. armra.com/Megyn. Dr. Sachs, welcome back.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's great to have you here in person.
Yes, indeed.
It's, when I read up on you and the studies in this book, I felt sad. I felt forlorn as the mother of 2 boys and a daughter, but this is about the boys and just about the state of American men today. Like, from the fact that they're being treated as problems from the time they're in kindergarten to the fact that they're no longer having sex with real women, wanting to get married, wanting to find jobs, wanting to date, to the sad cases, some of which we featured on this show, of kids committing suicide because they become too enraptured with an AI chatbot, whether it's a, quote, regular one or a sexy girl type one that's not real. I don't even know where to begin. Like, where do we begin? Like, to begin to solve all of this? So let's start, I guess, at the beginning. First of all, you've updated this book. Why?
Okay, so as you mentioned, the first edition came out 2007. And why did I write it? Well, I'm a family doctor. I've been a family doctor more than 30 years now. And in so many families, I'll think of one family where the parents are very concerned about their son. He was 16 years old at the time we had this conversation, and he's not doing well in school. He's basically failing Spanish, couldn't care less, spends his free time playing video games, looking at porn. Father said he's a total goofball. They're very proud of their daughter, who's basically a straight A student, captain of the varsity soccer team. The girl is shining, and the boy is adrift. And I saw this pattern over and over and over again. The reverse pattern, where the boy is a star and the girl is adrift, very, very rare. So why is this? Same parents, same household, but very different outcomes. And that was the motivation for the first edition of Boys Adrift, which I wrote 20 years ago. Now, 20 years ago, we didn't have all the evidence we have now, and things have changed a lot in 20 years, which is one of many reasons we needed a new edition. The Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, was kind enough to review my book 20 years ago. And they said they gave it a great review, which we put up the blurb on the cover. They said, very helpful, lots of good references, but they said it doesn't really make a good case that boys are falling behind. Well, 20 years ago, we didn't have all the data. Now we have the data. We know that boys are falling behind. Richard Reeves, I've had the great privilege of working with him and writing a paper for him, wrote the book Of Boys and Men. He founded the American Institute for Boys and Men, and they've been doing great work gathering data from the United States nationwide. So you can now go to their website at aibm.org, and you can see they've documented it that girls are now doing better than boys in every subject, including math and science, in every grade level, K through 12. Girls are now much more likely to go on to a four-year college than boys are. Four-year colleges in the United States are now roughly 60-40. Girls to boys. And women under 35 with no children at home are now out earning men under 35 with no children at home by about 20%. Because they're more likely to be college educated. They're working higher paying jobs. And I've done this presentation, various versions of this PowerPoint for all different kinds of audiences. And sometimes the pushback is pretty hostile. I was invited to speak to the elected trustees of the Toronto School District, which is the sixth largest school district in North America. And the director, we'd call him the superintendent, invited me because he wanted to begin gender-aware instructional strategies, girl-friendly computer coding, boy-friendly English. And he wanted me to explain to the board members why this is a good idea. Well, the pushback was very hostile. And one of the board members said, hey, so you're telling us we should be concerned about the fact that women now outnumber men at university by 3-2? Well, 50 years ago, men outnumbered women 3-2, and nobody seemed to care much about it now. The pendulum has swung the other way. Look, the trustee continued, men have most of the money. Men have most of the power. Most of the politicians are men. Almost all the billionaires are men. And the few billionaires who are women, like Mackenzie Scott Bezos and Melinda French Gates, are the ex-wives of men. Men have the money and the power. Explain to me why we should be concerned about boys falling behind. And I said, I've got an answer. One word: mating.
Mm-hmm. Women. I was thinking the same.
50 years ago, if a man graduated from four-year college and he was looking to marry a woman, he might have a number of qualifications in mind for his bride, but educational attainment was not one of them. If she was pretty, that would satisfy. Today, if a woman has graduated with a four-year degree and she's thinking of marrying a man, she's looking for a man who is as accomplished and motivated as she is. And there are not enough good men to go around. And this is not confined to college-educated women by any means. So I'm a family doctor. I'll tell you a story from my own practice. So a girl I know well, I've known her since she was a toddler. This story takes place, she's 20 years old. I said, Lauren, I bumped into Brett the other day, and he's just going on and on about how great you are and how funny you are and how pretty you are. And he told me he's asked you to marry him. He's asked you to marry him twice. Lauren, how come you don't want to marry the father of your two children? And she said, Dr. Sachs, I already got 2 babies at home. I do not need a third.
Uh-oh.
If a woman's going to marry a man, she's looking for a man who is as motivated and hardworking as she is. And this is true across every demographic. College educated, not college educated, white, black, Asian, Latina, makes no difference. And there are not enough good men to go around. So in the new edition of Boys Adrift, I paid the Financial Times $450 for the rights to reproduce one of their graphs showing this dramatic drop in coupling and fertility. So coupling means marriage plus cohabitation. Been a dramatic drop in marriage over the last 30 years. And sometimes when I'm doing one of my talks, person will say, well, you're just showing how old you are. People don't get married anymore. They live together. Okay, that's cohabitation. Cohabitation is dropping as well. Marriage plus cohabitation, demographers call coupling. So in the new edition, we got this graph showing this dramatic drop in coupling and dramatic drop in fertility. If a woman's going to have a baby, most women would like to have a father in the home, a man that they trust, a man who's as hardworking and motivated as they are. And as I've said several times now, there are not enough good men to go around. That was my answer to the board member. That's why we should care.
So we're not producing men with 4-year degrees or even just aggression and drive to get to where they want to go professionally, to be a hard worker, to be able to provide for a family. At the same time, we are producing women with those credentials. And so it's the mismatch that the women are objecting to.
Yes.
And probably that the men are objecting to as well.
That's part of what women are objecting to, but there's more going on. And when we get to porn, we'll talk about that. There are many reasons why women are now looking at young men and saying, no, thank you. And we'll talk about that. And educational attainment and motivation is part of the story. It's not the whole story of why many women have given up. So the Pew Research Center recently surveyed young women in the United States who are single, 18 to 30, if I recall correctly, and said, okay, you're not in a relationship with a man. Would you like to be? Maybe serious relationship, maybe just fun dating? Only 35% said yes.
Why?
65% said no. The majority of American women have now given up. And scholars have coined the term heteropessimism to refer to women's despair and hopelessness.
Is that across political parties?
Across all parties. This includes Republicans as well as Democrats. And so there's a bunch of factors going on here. It's not just the fact. So as one woman in my own practice told me, she said, I'm not so bothered by the fact that I earn more than he does. It's just that he expects me to be his mother.
Oh.
He expects me to pick up after him and do chores for him, and I'm not interested. So it's not just academic achievement. It's training boys to be good men. And we'll talk more about that in our time this morning, the many domains in which we are falling short.
I mean, if you think back to, the 1950s household where the gender roles were pretty well defined, the father was going to be the provider, the person who worked outside of the home, the mother was going to be the doting wife and mother and make the meals and keep the house clean. A lot of women didn't like it, but it worked. It's helpful to have clearly defined roles, and then you know which one to play. But with women's lib, as women started to get out of the house and so on and so forth, I think it's fine to have women who are the primary wage earners, but there does need to be a clear definition of the roles at home. Like I can say in my own home, if my husband were sitting around looking at me like all of that was expected of me, I'd be mad too. I wouldn't. But that's not how it works. He and I have very clearly defined responsibilities around the house. He does what, he is comfortable with and what I've agreed to, share with him. And I do what I'm comfortable with, like I don't take out the trash. That's man's work. I don't touch automobiles. That's his work. I don't shovel snow. I don't shovel walks. If things break down, that's for him to do. But I do the predominant amount of cooking in the house when it needs to get done. And if somebody's going to unload the dishwasher, it's probably going to be me. Could be him, but you know what I mean? And this works for us because there are certain roles that we each fill, but I don't think you could change one majorly and leave all the old responsibilities on the woman too.
Well, I think there's been a lot of confusion on this point. So, for example, Richard Reeves, who I mentioned earlier, and Kay Heimowitz before him have said changes in the culture and changes in the economy are to blame for this decline in boys' achievement. 50 years ago, you didn't need a college degree. You could have a high school degree, go to work at the auto factory and make great money and support a family on one income. Today, many of those factory jobs are gone. We've changed from being an industrial economy 50 years ago to being mostly a service economy today. And people like Richard Reeves and Kay Heimowitz say that's what the problem is. And Kay Heimowitz wrote this book in which she asserts that the rise of women is responsible for the decline of men. That's literally the subtitle of the book, how the rise of women has turned men into boys. And she argues, plausibly, but I will say incorrectly. She argues plausibly that 50 years ago, men were motivated because they expected to be the sole breadwinner. So they worked hard so they could say to a young woman, hey, marry me, we'll start a family, I'll be a good provider. But as she documents in her book, you look at young Americans under 35, as I've said earlier, with no kids at home, women are now earning more money than men are. So men look around, they see the women are doing better than them in school, that women are earning more money than them in the workplace. So where is their motivation? I'm going to quote from her book. She says, the men today are troubled by the lack of certainty about their role as providers in the global marketplace of the 21st century.
Yeah, that
quote,
makes
unquote.
sense.
It makes sense, but it's wrong.
Oh, how's it wrong?
It's not the correct explanation. How do I know she's wrong? I know she's wrong because unlike Kay Heimowitz, I have visited more than 500 schools over the last 25 years. Very often when I visit a school, the format is morning meetings with students, afternoon workshop for teachers, evening for parents. And that was the format at this particular elementary school I visited. And the very first thing on the agenda was to meet with the principal. So I'm in the principal's office waiting for her. She's busy. She's tied up with something. And as I'm waiting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids walk in, discipline referrals, all boys.
Of course.
So I pride myself on my ability to strike up conversation with 7-year-olds. So I say to these kids, what are you doing here?
What are you in for?
What are you having? We got in trouble. Our teacher said, draw a picture of anything you want. And I drew a picture of a rifle. And I got to sit down because it turns out that violates the zero tolerance policy at this school for weapons. Teachers saw me and Jason saying, bang, bang, you're dead. Teachers saw me and Brett throwing snowballs at each other. Boys doing things that boys have always done now gets you in trouble. So I asked these boys, so what do you think of school? School's stupid. I hate school. School's for girls. Not one of these boys said, well, I'm uncertain about my role as a provider in the global marketplace of the 21st century. Boys' negative attitude towards school starts early. And Deborah Stipek, former Dean of Education at Stanford, found that those attitudes once formed are global, stable, and non-contingent. That's a fancy way of saying that once that 8-year-old boy has decided he hates school, he's not going to change. You come back 7 years later, he still says he hates school, and he doesn't think there's anything he can do or anything you can do that's going to make a difference. So the subtitle of my book is there are 6 factors driving the growing epidemic of unmotivated boys and underachieving young men. And the first of those 6 factors, not necessarily the most important, but the first that I address is changes in education. 30 years ago, school was more friendly to boys. So just recently, a mom shared with me her story of her son. He's 6 years old at the time this story takes place. He's in kindergarten. And the teacher's holding up some wooden sticks and some cotton puffs and some Elmer's glue. And she said, today we're going to make pussy willows. I'm going to show you, each of you, how to arts and crafts pussy willow. Well, Jason doesn't want to make a pussy willow. He wants to make a lightsaber. And he says, I'm going to make a lightsaber. And she says, no, we're making pussy willows. So he glues a white cotton ball to his wooden skewer, and he brandishes at her, channeling his Darth Vader. He says, I find your lack of faith disturbing. And she sends him to the principal. He's got a discipline referral. He got 4 discipline referrals his first 2 weeks. And mom told me he came home at the end of the second week saying, I hate school.
I don't like school.
I don't want to go back. School has become unfriendly to boys. I'm old enough to remember 30 years ago, kindergarten used to be about duck, duck, goose, singing in rounds, finger painting, going on a field trip to the park to splash in a pond to chase after tadpoles. Not anymore. American kindergarten has become first grade. Schools across this country, public and private, now expect 5-year-olds to sit still and learn about diphthongs. And that acceleration of the kindergarten curriculum took place before we had the research showing that the language area of a 5-year-old boy looks like the language area of a 3.5-year-old girl. It is not developmentally appropriate to ask a 5-year-old boy to sit still, be quiet, and learn about diphthongs for an hour. And the result is 5-year-old boys who decide they hate school, who decide they're stupid. And once that attitude is formed, as Deborah Stipek and others have found, it's very hard to change. So in the book, I talk about, what do you need to do? Well, don't enroll your son in kindergarten at 5. Enroll him at 6. Kindergarten has become first grade. Find a play-based pre-K. Give him that gift of an extra year of childhood. Start him in kindergarten at 6 years of age. I actually wrote about this 25 years ago for the American Psychological Association. My recommendation that we start kids in kindergarten at 6 years of age instead of 5. And to my great surprise, my obscure article published in a scholarly journal was picked up by the New York Times and other media. And that is actually one factor that led me to write my first book, Why Gender Matters, that I've got the sense that some people care about this. Find a boy-friendly school.
Yep.
What does that mean? So in the new edition of my book, Boys Adrift, I go into some detail about how you can figure out on a one-day visit, is this school boy-friendly or not? Ask to see the honor roll. You know, I was, as I mentioned in the opening of the book, I was visiting another school, middle school, and when I meet with kids, it's always question and answer. It's not a long speech. It's a question and answer. So I said to the students, this assembly, I said, all right, this next question is just for the boys. Gentlemen, I was just out in the hallway. I was looking at the principal's honor roll. There's 22 names on the principal's honor roll. 19 girls, 3 boys. Can any of you boys raise your hand, explain to me why there's 19 girls but only 3 boys? And several boys raised their hand, and they all gave a variation on the same answer. Girls are smarter. Girls are smarter. Boys believe this, and they believe it because they've grown up in the world of girls rule, boys drool. Girls go to college to get more knowledge. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. And they see the evidence. They have seen that girls are getting better grades than boys in every grade, K through 12. So if you're at a school where you got 20 girls and 3 boys on the honor roll, that's not a boy-friendly school.
Yeah.
The boys have disengaged. If you're looking at elementary school, ask about recess. It should be at least 2 recess a day.
In our school, in our boys' school, in the elementary school years, the first period is recess
Yes.
or gym. The very first thing they do is run them.
Yes. Well, and you mentioned an all-boys school, and I have visited a great many boys' schools over my school visits. And one of the first schools I visited at Landon in Montgomery County, Maryland, 20 many years ago, I said to the teacher, where are the chairs in this 3rd grade classroom? Why are there no chairs? And she said, well, everyone knows that 8-year-old boys learn better standing than sitting. When that boy sits down, his brain shuts off. I said, excuse me, I didn't know that. And I do have a PhD in psychology. I do read the educational psychology literature, and I'm not aware of any research that supports your claim that boys learn better standing rather than sitting. But in her defense, it is well known within that community of boys' elementary school that many boys learn better standing rather than sitting. And we now do understand the neuroscience having to do with parasympathetic versus sympathetic innervation in girls versus boys, respectively. And these are some of the strategies I share with schools. How you motivate boys, make sitting optional. Now, it's not just that, not quite that simple. You make sitting optional in a co-ed classroom, and I observed this myself at Cunningham Elementary in Waterloo, Iowa. This boy here is sitting. The boy on his right is twirling, making a buzzing noise. The boy on his left is flopping on the floor. He's on the floor, flopping back and forth. He told me his name was Tyreek. He told me he was pretending to be a dying fish. And I asked the boy sitting, I said, were you bothered by what Tyreek was doing? He said, I don't know. What was Tyreek doing? Look, if you try this in a co-ed classroom, and you've got a girl sitting, and the boy on her right is twirling, and the boy on her left is flopping on the floor, she's going to say, excuse me, how am I supposed to concentrate with these bozos? So you can do this, but you have to have the boys stand at the back of the classroom, and you, the teacher, must move around the classroom. Otherwise, you have classroom management issues.
So we're seeing an interesting microcosm of this as our kids get older, because our 2 boys go to a boys' school, our daughter goes to a girls' school, but in high school, the boys' school and the girls' school merge. And what's interesting is the boys tend to say the teachers favor the girls. When they merge and they start going to classes where there are girls and boys, they like seeing girls, but it's a bit of an eye roll because they're like, the teachers love all the girls because suddenly you've got all these rule followers there who can easily sit politely for an hour or whatever it is. And the boys have been raised in an all-boy environment and are used to more permissive teachers who understand they do need to move more. They need to make paper airplanes. They're still listening, but they need to be able to. And when you merge them together after, in those environments.
So you're absolutely right that
it's jarring.
Girls across every demographic are more concerned about pleasing the teacher, and boys are less so. And this is not true. This is not only true across all human cultures. It's true across species. It's as true in chimpanzees as it is in humans. So primatologists observing chimpanzees in the wild, the mother chimpanzee is teaching the juvenile how to fish for termites. You take a stick, you strip it, and you stick it down into the termite mound, leave it there for a moment, then pull it out. There will be termites on it. You can eat them. And the girl chimp is paying attention and following along, and the boy chimp completely ignores her and goes off to wrestle with the other chimps. So this phenomenon that girls are more concerned about pleasing the adult and pay better attention than boys do is robust, meaning it is true not only across every human culture, it's as true in chimpanzees as it is in humans. It is hardwired.
So you need teachers who understand that dynamic and don't penalize the boys for being normal boys.
Teachers who understand the differences. Fundamentally, you don't need girls' classrooms and boys' classrooms as much as you need teachers who understand the differences. And that's a lot of what I do. I share what I've learned with schools. And if you understand that, then the same boy who loves video games will love Emily Dickinson, will love Jane Eyre. And the same girl who loves SZA and Ariana Grande will love computer coding.
That's so fascinating. That's so good. Yes, you do have to look at the actual specific teachers. And I think you're arming parents with the information to push back. So if they keep getting called in there or they keep getting their son downgraded and then they find out it's because of his, quote, behavior, there may be some layers to peel back before you just accede to that.
Well, let me warn parents, because my own approach to that situation has changed. So 20 years ago, I would have told parents, hey, here's some research. Here's my book. Take this into the principal, share this with them, and see if you can't get the principal to understand that what a boy needs is different from what a girl needs. I have given up on that approach because it doesn't work. It simply is not effective. You're not going to, one parent is not going to change that principal's mind. And there's a lot at stake. In the new edition of Boys Adrift, I share a longitudinal cohort study showing that a boy who is suspended from school once, the risk of him being incarcerated for a felony in prison increases by 800%.
Wow.
One school suspension profoundly changes a boy's attitude towards school. He now regards teachers and administrators as the enemy, and other boys who've been suspended are friends. And most remarkably in this study, they looked at boys who were suspended once and boys who were suspended 10 times. No difference. One suspension is all it takes to change a boy's attitude. And once that attitude is changed, it is global, stable, and non-contingent. It's going to be very hard to change it back. So if your son is getting reprimanded, this is a red alert. You need to consider switching schools. And I'm not asking you to do anything I didn't do. My wife and I were very unhappy with the choice of schools available to us in Montgomery County, Maryland. So I sold my medical practice that I started from scratch in 1990 and built up to 7,000 patients. I sold my practice to my associate, who's still running it, I might add, 17 years later. We sold our home.
You went to Pennsylvania.
And we moved to Chester County, Pennsylvania, and we've never regretted it. Your kid has to be your first priority. Above your work, above your home. If you have to switch jobs and sell your home, that's what you have to do. But if your kid is if your son's getting discipline referrals on the verge of suspension, you've got to intervene immediately.
That's very good to know. We did the same. We moved we fled from New York City, not for these reasons, but because of the woke schools and what amounted to abuse in our schools. I mean, I've told the audience this, but in our boys' school, not only did they unleash a 6-week transgender education program on the children without telling us, where they had the boys raise their hands and say on a scale of 1 to 5, how much of a boy are you?
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, without telling us. This is 3rd grade they did this.
Oh my gosh.
And then after George Floyd-a-Palooza, they actually made it mandatory reading amongst the faculty, an article by a ridiculous so-called academic at some no-name school who posited that, and I quote, "In every classroom where white children learn, there is a future killer cop."
Wow.
So we got the hell out of there.
So
It's one of the best schools in the nation, ostensibly.
You mentioned changes, and that's another big change that I had to address in the new edition. 20 years ago, teachers didn't get in trouble for using the phrase boys and girls. Boys and girls, would you please line up?
Yes.
Wouldn't get teachers in trouble. Now it will.
That school, that's an all-boys school, won't say boy or son anymore. They just say, please collect your student.
Yes. Because they will argue that the terms boy and girl are heteronormative and exclusionary, because what if you're non-binary? What if you're trans? And this is not just blue states and blue cities. In Lincoln, Nebraska, which is not a blue state, in Lincoln, Nebraska, the official guidance from the school board is you are not to use the term boys and girls. If you do, you get a reprimand. You are to use the term purple penguins.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, this is insane.
Yeah. At this school, the same boys' school, they unleashed the genderbread man when we got, in this part of this education program, is not to be confused with gingerbread, but genderbread,
I know.
where he doesn't have, one identifiable set. Exactly.
So and we've just talked about the first factor so far, but so many reasons we had to have a new edition to address these new challenges. You need to you need to be sure that your school is comfortable talking about boys and girls. A school that understands that what a boy needs to get excited about poetry is different from what a girl needs to get excited about poetry. And if they don't understand that, if the principal gives you a blank look, then you need to look elsewhere.
So how do those boys who are having this experience, the kindergarten versus the 1st grade stuff, the sit down, the absence of understanding on how they learn, how to speak to them, how to discipline them if they do transgress, and not demonizing things that are just normal for boys, like drawing a rifle, which is fun for kids to pretend they're soldiers, etc. How do those boys then wind up in high school, latter part of high school, not wanting a girlfriend, not interested in sex or dating? Maybe they'll go to college, maybe they won't, maybe they'll get an active job, maybe they won't, but and just feeling apathetic.
Well, let's move on to that second factor now, which is video games, because that's a big part of it.
I was shocked by what I read about the video games in the book. Shocked. When I was at Fox back in 2004 and 5, and there were many people on Fox who were lamenting these video games and what they were doing, like the violent ones and some of the driving the auto ones. And there were so many reactive pieces rolling their eyes at these pundits, like, oh my, come on, it's not the video games. And I mean, I'm here to say, after having read the book, actually, it is the video games.
So a real good question to ask any boy to get a sense of where he is he at risk for being a boy adrift? Ask this question. What's your favorite thing to do in your free time when you are by yourself with no one watching? And I often ask kids that question when I meet with students. I'll say, raise your hand if you'd like to answer that question. And a girl raises her hand and she says, my favorite thing is to play guitar in the style of Janis Joplin. I said, whoa, what's your name? Melissa. I don't know Melissa, but I kind of feel like I do, because her favorite thing to do is to play guitar in the style of Janis Joplin. If you want to get to know someone in 60 seconds or less, ask them that question. What's their favorite thing to do in their free time? And just over the 25 years I've been doing these school visits, I have seen it narrow among boys. And the most common response now from boys is video games. They want to spend their free time playing video games. And parents don't understand how good the video games are. So RDR2, a lot of parents don't even know what I'm talking about. the video game Red Dead Redemption has earned more than $3 billion. It's earned more money than the first Avatar, the highest growing movie of all time. And most people have heard of Avatar. Many parents have never heard of RDR2. So it's earned more money than Avatar, even though it appeals to a narrow demographic of boys and young men. So this is an incredible video game where the physics are absolutely realistic. You're living in the 1890s out west, and it's a peculiar time because the West is kind of becoming modern, and it's a transitional period. It's not the Wild West per se. And how you interact with people matters. How you interact with your horse matters. If you're nice to your horse and it gets loose, it'll come back. If you're not nice, it'll run off and won't come back. It takes about 40 hours to complete your mission in RDR2. And when a boy has accomplished that, they've told me it's such a great feeling. I feel like I've really mastered something. And it will raise their status in the eyes of their peers. Whoa, Jared finished RDR2. What a man. And we've got the research, which I present in that chapter of Boys Adrift. Time spent playing video games has gone up. Time spent interacting with girls has gone down. And many boys will tell you they would rather spend their free time playing video games than interacting with girls. Mm-hmm. Why would I want to interact with her? I see her in algebra class. Boring. So how do you want to spend your free time? And we'll talk more about testosterone levels because that factors into this.
Big time.
And we'll talk more about pornography because that factors into this. But video games, I'm not saying you have to prohibit video games. The research does not support that. So my brand is evidence-based. When I make a recommendation,
long-term
I'm
studies.
going to show you longitudinal cohort studies. I'm going to show you research that supports every recommendation I make. How much time spent playing video games is too much time. No more than 40 minutes a night on school nights, no more than an hour a day on weekends, and your minutes do not roll over. So no video game console in the bedroom.
Right.
You need to limit, govern, and guide how much time your son is spending playing video games. And you also need to limit what games he is playing. Because really awful games like Grand Theft Auto. Mm-hmm. So Grand Theft Auto is a game where you get rewarded for killing unarmed civilians. And we have a longitudinal cohort study where they recruited kids at age 12 and followed them to age 15. What kind of video games are they playing? How much time are they spending playing video games? And control for every parameter like race, ethnicity, household income, family composition, parental involvement. Because a kid spending more time playing video games, maybe his parents aren't as involved as a kid spending less time. You got to control for everything, including parental involvement. When you control for all those parameters, you find that boys playing violent games like Grand Theft Auto change over 3 years' time. They become less patient, less honest, more selfish. And it's a big change. After 3 years, a boy who's spending his time playing violent video games on these parameters, he's looking like a boy who was raised in a violent and abusive home all his life.
Wow. Even
though he's been raised in a loving and nurturing home all his life. So it really matters. So the California State Assembly brought the researchers out. They brought Craig Anderson and Doug Gentile, the lead investigators on this study, out to Sacramento. They said, you're telling us that the most popular video game in the United States, Grand Theft Auto, is a game that your research shows is going to change personality, cause kids to become more selfish, less honest. And Craig Anderson, who helped me write that chapter, said, yeah, absolutely. And so they wrote a law. California statute made it a civil offense to sell a game like Grand Theft Auto, not any violent game, but the worst games like Grand Theft Auto, to any child under 18. You'd have to show ID, put the games behind the counter. You'd have to show ID to prove that you're 18 in order to buy the game. The video game industry immediately brought suit, claiming that the California statute violated their First Amendment right of free speech. And the video game lawsuit went to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the video game industry, throwing out the California statute, rendering it null and void. Justice Samuel Alito wrote a concurrence. He said, look, I've read the research of Anderson and Gentile, and I share the concerns of California parents and California lawmakers. These games are heinous. That's the word he used. no kid should be playing a game where you get rewarded for killing unarmed civilians. He said, nevertheless, it is the ruling of this court that deciding what games children will play is not the job of the California State Assembly. It is the job of the parent. I'd have included a link to the full text of Justice Alito's remark in the new edition of my book, Boys Adrift, because you need to understand this is your job. There can be no law or regulation limiting the sale of any video game in the United States, no matter how awful the game, no matter how young the child, because the United States Supreme Court has so ruled. So you must know what game your son is playing. And that's all you have to know.
Can I ask you?
What's the name of the game? Then you go to commonsensemedia.org, type in the name of the game, type in Grand Theft Auto, and it'll say absolutely not. No child,
I love Common Sense Media.
Should be doing this.
That'll help you with movies. It'll help you with a lot.
Yeah.
Just today, we have this news of the Meta settlement. Meta, which of course owns Facebook and Instagram, has now entered into this multi-billion-dollar settlement with multiple state attorneys general who had sued it, claiming that these properties are unfairly targeting children in a way that's addictive and very harmful to them, which obviously is true. But I have to say, I couldn't help when I heard the settlement but think, because they were like, there should be limits on the number of hours that the children can log on, and there should be limits on how many times you can sort of tickle the children with the notifications like, hey, look, your friend's on here. And that's all good. But all I could think when I was reading it was, my children are already not doing that because we don't allow that. Like it's great, I guess, to have this backstop for parents who aren't actively parenting their children and making sure, as is their duty, that their children are protected from online predators, which I do think those social media apps are. But it's really our responsibility. There's only so many legal judgments, settlements, cases we can get that are going to protect our children, because let's face it, the vast majority of kids lie anyway to get past the age barriers and so on.
Well, and I've seen this in my own practice. A boy was doing well in elementary school. Then in middle school, his grades took a nosedive, and parents took him to the psychiatrist, looked at the Connor scales. He's off the chart, not paying attention in every class. So the psychiatrist said, well, it certainly looks like ADHD. Let's try Vyvanse, which was very helpful. But he got side effects, palpitations, jittery, loss of appetite. So parents saw some articles I've written for New York Times and Time Magazine expressing concern about these medications. They brought him to me for a second opinion. And I did a more careful sleep history. I said, does your son get plenty of sleep? Mom said, oh, absolutely. He's in his bedroom every night at 9. We wake him up at 6. That's 9 hours. That's enough. Don't you think? And I said to the boy, do you have a video game console in your bedroom? He said, of course, doesn't everybody? I said, were you playing last night? He said, yeah. I said, when did you finish? He said, 1:30. I was like, you were playing video games at 1:30 last night? I said, is that pretty typical? He said, yeah, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. He needs at least 8 hours of sleep a night. He's getting 5 or less. He's sleep deprived. Sleep deprivation perfectly mimics attention deficit disorder of the inattentive variety, which was his diagnosis. Vyvanse was very helpful. What's Vyvanse? What's Adderall? They're amphetamines. They're speed. They compensate for the sleep deprivation. But the appropriate remedy for sleep deprivation is sleep, not Schedule II amphetamines. So I said to Mom, you got to get the video game console out of the bedroom. You didn't even know he was playing. You got to get that out of the bedroom, no more than 40 minutes a night playing video games. And so said, that's totally unacceptable. I'm going to be the next ninja. He's referring to a man who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month playing video games. I'll never get there at 40 minutes a night. And Mom's like, what can I do? So here's a mom who feels powerless to exercise her authority. So again, in that chapter, I've got the guidelines. You need to find the courage to be the evil parent. No video game console in the bedroom. That's not just my recommendation. Those are the official guidelines of the American Academy of Pediatrics.
What about when it comes to just social media in general?
So social media in general, we now know is really more of a risk for girls than it is for boys. Girls are spending more time on social media. Boys are spending more time on video games. So yeah, I totally endorse John Haidt, Jean Twengey's recommendation. Kids should not be on social media at all until 18 years of age. Jean Twengey's recommendation, not 16, which is John Haidt's recommendation. There's no evidence to support 16. The evidence supports 18. Kids should not be on social media under 18 years of age. And Facebook issued their official statement yesterday, and they said, look, we need our peers to do this as well. Yeah. And I think that's a fair statement, because if it's only Instagram and Facebook, Kids are just going to go to TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat, and you won't really have accomplished much. This has to be across the board. And parents, you can't wait for the courts. You can't wait for the legislature. You need to have the courage to be the evil parents, to lock it down, to limit the video games, and to lock down the social media.
Yes, have the courage to be the evil parent. That's a good line. And it's true, because if you don't enforce these rules with your children, who will? And if you're not upsetting your children, we talked about this one of the other times you were on, if you're not upsetting your children here and there,
you're not doing your job.
You're not doing things right. Yeah. You're not there to be liked.
Yeah. But I want to move on to our next factor, because I'm hoping we can cover as much as we can, and that is medications for attention deficit disorder. I just mentioned the boy who was diagnosed with ADHD. There's been a huge rise in the proportion of American kids diagnosed with ADHD. In 1979, only 1% of American kids were diagnosed with ADHD and was understood to be a disorder of childhood.
What year?
1979, 1%.
1%.
And was understood to be a disorder kids would outgrow. It was regarded as a disorder of childhood. Today, right now, according to the CDC, 23% of 17-year-old boys in the United States have been diagnosed with ADHD. 23%. And the great majority of those are on medications like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, Concerta, Metadate. So I wrote a book for a French publisher titled Pourquoi les garçons perdent pied, les filles se mettent en danger.
Oh, look at you.
With colleagues in French, most importantly, Isabelle Crouzet. And working with my French colleagues, I learned that in all of France, there are fewer than 6,000 kids on medication for ADHD in all of France. There's more kids in Connecticut, here in Connecticut, on medication for ADHD than there are in all of France, a nation of 67 million people.
Wow.
Why is this? The fundamental reason, and I explore this at length in the chapter on ADHD and Boys Adrift, in the new edition of Boys Adrift. In the United States, doctors' first reaction is, let's try Adderall, let's try Vyvanse and see if it helps. That's true in the United States, it's true in Canada, and it is true in no other country. Okay, well, what's not to like? These medications. So I did a talk at Harvard Medical School on the title of the conference was Learning and the Brain. And my talk was the title, Why Gender Matters in the Classroom. And I would like to tell you that my talk was the buzz of the conference. It was not. The presentation everybody was really excited about was a presentation by Dr. John Gabrielli, who somehow got permission to give ADHD medication to normal kids and withhold it from kids with severe ADHD, and then to study how well kids learn on and off medication.
Wow. And
he found that medication helps normal kids as much as it helps kids with ADHD. That's an enormously important finding. Because many times in my years as a physician and psychologist, I have said to parents, look, your son doesn't meet criteria for ADHD. And the parents have said, yeah, but the other doctor prescribed Adderall and it was so helpful. The parents are interpreting the response to medication as though the response to medication had some diagnostic significance. This medication was very helpful. It was prescribed for ADHD, therefore he must have ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. Wrong. Dr. Gabrielli's study and others like it show these medications help normal kids as much as they help kids with ADHD. The response to medication doesn't mean anything. Okay, so these medications help kids concentrate and focus, whether or not they have ADHD. They compensate for the sleep deprivation. They're uppers. They make you happy. What's not to like? Why not just put all the kids on medication? We can't put all the kids on medication because we now have 15 different studies showing that these medications, Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, Concerta, Metadate, Focalin, damage the motivational center of the brain, the nucleus accumbens. If you take these medications for a long period of time, you're going to become lazy and unmotivated.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing this talk for parents, and during Q&A, a father said, Dr. Sachs, I'm sorry. Some parts of this talk were good, but your claim that Adderall and Vyvanse damage the brain, he said, I'm sorry, I can't take that seriously. These medications are widely prescribed. If that were true, and I interrupted him, I said, if that were true, you would have heard about this before. From someone with better credentials than me. I'm just a family doctor. You would have heard about it from someone like Dr. Joseph Biederman, chief of pediatric psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. The same thought occurred to Senator Chuck Grassley, who chair of the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, who summoned Dr. Biederman to the chambers of the United States Senate Judiciary Committee and said, Dr. Biederman, you've really been pushing Adderall hard. You've said that if a doctor prescribes Adderall for a child and the parents don't promptly fill and administer that medication, the parents should be considered for charges of criminal child neglect. Dr. Biederman, are you by any chance taking money for the drug companies that you haven't publicly disclosed? And he said, well, certainly. How much money, Dr. Biederman? Well, I don't know off the top of my head, maybe $300,000-400,000. Dr. Biederman, I want you to go back to your offices at Harvard and return to this committee under subpoena if necessary and tell us exactly how much money you've taken. Turned out it was more than $1.6 million.
Wow.
Now, his action was not unlawful. It was not illegal. Doctors can take money from drug companies.
But it's dishonest.
It was unethical.
Yeah.
He should have told us. I got a flyer from Harvard.
Stand by. Hold that thought.
Yep.
Got to take a quick break. We will be back with Dr. Sachs. Aren't you learning so much? He is author of the new Boys Adrift. Don't go away. Hey, thanks for watching today's full episode. If you're new here, throw us a subscribe. See what you think. Stay in touch. There's plenty more goodness where this one came from. As always, we really do value your feedback. So email me too, Megyn, Megyn at megynkelly.com, or just leave a comment down below. I do read them. I meander over and I scroll through and I find them very entertaining and really appreciate the feedback. But in any event, join the community by becoming a subscriber so you miss nothing. We value your support. We may not always agree on positions, but as you know, I'm very open-minded to people who disagree with me. That's how I learn. So thanks. And thanks for trusting us to always talk about it openly, honestly, and with provocative conversations. Everyone's talking about weight loss injections because the results can be so dramatic. They work by lowering blood sugar and reducing appetite. But what if you are looking to lose weight but are not interested in painful weekly injections, especially when you hear about some of the intense side effects? This is why doctors created a weight loss supplement called Lean, and the results could be remarkable. Lean says the studied ingredients in their product have been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat by converting it into energy, and to curb your appetite and cravings so that you are not as hungry. But listen, Lean is not for the casual dieter who only has a few pounds to lose. The doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition created Lean for frustrated dieters with 10 or more pounds to lose. You could get started with 20% off and free rush shipping, adding Lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter MK for your discount. That's promo code MK at takelean.com. We are back now with Dr. Leonard Sachs, S-A-X. He is the author of Boys Adrift. It's now been updated. The 6 factors driving the growing epidemic of unmotivated boys and underachieving young men. Unmotivated boys and underachieving young men. And when we left off, we were on the subject of ADHD medication, which is, in Dr. Sachs's view, overprescribed to far too many children who don't need it.
I think we've got real good evidence that it's overprescribed. One is comparing the United States to other countries like France. But I want to continue my comment about Senator Grassi's investigation. I mentioned that he had really embarrassed Joe Biederman, professor at Harvard, who admitted that he had accepted at least $1.6 million. And as I pointed out, that's unethical. I got a flyer from Harvard Medical School saying, come to Harvard for a 3-day conference on best practice and evaluation and management of ADHD, led by the renowned Dr. Joseph Biederman. No mention of any drug company support. No mention of the fact that he's getting paid more by the drug companies than he's getting paid by Harvard. He's functioning as a paid spokesperson for the drug companies. So Senator Grassi then summoned Fred Goodwin, who was chief of the National Institute of Mental Health, arguably the most prestigious position an American psychiatrist can hold, stepped down from that position when National Public Radio gave him his own radio program called The Infinite Mind, which he hosted for 10 years. And people would call in and ask questions, and Dr. Goodwin would answer. And we've got a program archived where mom calls in and says, Dr. Goodwin, my son has been on medication for ADHD since he was 5. First Ritalin, now Adderall. He's not been off a single day. And I was reading about a drug holiday. Do you think it'd be okay for him to go off medication maybe over the summer so we could see who he is off medication? And Dr. Goodwin said, no, you don't want to do that. He said, my good friend and colleague, Dr. Joseph Biederman at Harvard, says these medications are for children with ADHD, just like insulin for a child with type 1 diabetes. If your kid had type 1 diabetes, you wouldn't take them off insulin for the summer. Of course not. You could be confident these medications are safe and effective. You need to keep them on the medication. And Mom says, oh, well, thank you, Dr. Goodwin. You've really set my mind at ease. So Senator Grassley summoned Dr. Goodwin to the chambers of the United States Senate Judiciary Committee and said, Dr. Goodwin, have you recently accepted money for the drug companies that you haven't publicly disclosed? He said, certainly. How much? Do you have any idea? I know exactly how much. He came prepared. It's just over 1.3 million. Dr. Goodwin, didn't you feel some duty to disclose this on national public radio, to disclose you're getting paid a lot more money from drug companies than you're getting paid by NPR, that you are functioning as a paid spokesperson for the drug companies? Did you not feel any duty to disclose? Dr. Goodwin said, certainly not. Well, why not, doctor? Can you explain that to me? Dr. Goodwin said, because it is standard practice.
Oh, wow.
All the leaders of our field do this. And that was the most troubling line in the testimony that Senator Grassley heard. Here is the former chief of the National Institute of Mental Health telling us it is standard practice for all the leaders of child psychiatry in this country to take millions of dollars for drug companies and not tell us. So I wrote an article for the New York Daily News titled Child Psychiatry is Sick with Hidden Conflicts of Interest, which is absolutely true. And I fought to include in the new edition of Boys Adrift detailed guidance for parents to determine, does your kid have ADHD? Does he really have it? Or maybe he just hates school, or maybe he's sleep deprived. And I really had to fight for that, because the publisher said to me, Dr. Sachs, are you seriously suggesting that after reading your one book, a parent is qualified to question the judgment of an experienced board-certified child psychiatrist? I said, absolutely.
Yes, I am suggesting that.
I am suggesting that because child psychiatry is sick with hidden conflicts of interest. When you ask a psychiatrist in the United States, are you aware of the research showing that these medications damage the motivational center of the brain? They will say no, they are not aware of that research. That's not true in Germany. I spoke on this topic in Munich, and the doctors there are well aware of this. But in this country, look, when people are impressed by Harvard, when I spoke in Germany, they're not impressed by Harvard Medical School. They regard Harvard Medical School as a tool of the drug companies.
No, they're not wrong.
It's a very different view.
Well, the other thing you point out in the book
have.
is who is the most likely person to suggest a diagnosis of ADHD?
Yes. So,
and I mean, just let that float out there for the listening audience right now. Who do you think is the most likely person to suggest this child might have ADHD?
Share about my study. So I got funding from the American Academy of Family Physicians to survey all the doctors in the Washington area. So that's the District of Columbia, Montgomery, PG County in Maryland, and Northern Virginia. And we asked them many questions, but most importantly, that question. We asked the doctors, who first suggests the diagnosis of ADHD, of attention deficit? Is it the parent, teacher, doctor, other professional, neighbor? And the doctors told it is most often the teacher. Now, I'm not saying the teacher did anything wrong. If this kid's not paying attention, that's a problem. It is a problem, and we need to figure out why. I have been in the classroom at parents' request to observe their son. On 2 occasions, the teacher did something I thought was a little inappropriate. On 2 occasions, the teacher said, class, Dr. Sachs is here with us today solely to observe Nicholas.
What?
And see whether he's paying attention.
That's terrible.
Despite that fact, Nicholas is still not paying attention. He's looking out the window. He's playing with his pencil. If the teacher says Nicholas is not paying attention, you can be certain Nicholas is not paying attention. The question for the doctor is to figure out, why is he not paying attention? A kid who's depressed is not paying attention. A survivor of child abuse is not paying attention. Kid who hates school is not paying attention. So I'll give you a quick line from my presentation for doctors and psychologists. How can you distinguish in a quick office visit whether this kid is not paying attention because he hates school or because he truly has ADHD? ADHD is a cognitive deficit. It means kids really cannot pay attention even if they want to. So, example from my own practice. A middle school boy, not doing well in school, went to the psychiatrist, diagnosed ADHD, was on medication, got side effects. Parents brought him to me for a second opinion. I asked him this question, asked this one question. What's your favorite subject at school? Emphasizing the word subject. This boy said, well, I love math and art, music, but I hate reading English language arts. Okay, that's hugely helpful. He just told me he doesn't like anything involving the written word. And I determined in one visit, this kid has dyslexia. Psychiatrist made the wrong diagnosis. He doesn't have ADHD, he has dyslexia. Okay, we can get him off medication, bring in appropriate resources. He's blossomed. This was years ago. He's graduated from college. Everything's fine. Another boy, also middle school, also not doing well, also diagnosed by the child psychiatrist as having ADHD. And I said to this boy, what's your favorite subject at school? And he said, lunch. Okay, if the answer is lunch or recess, you got to take a step back. He knows lunch is not a subject. If he says that lunch is his favorite subject, he's telling you he does not respect the academic enterprise. He has no interest in school as school. Now, hating school is a big problem, but it's not ADHD. It's not a psychiatric diagnosis. And sometimes the problem is not with the boy at all, but with the school. So there's a lot of reasons why kids are not paying attention. ADHD is one of many possibilities, and it's the doctor's job to figure out what's the correct diagnosis, what's the correct explanation. But in this country and Canada and no other country, doctors say, let's try Adderall, let's try Vyvanse and see if it helps. And it will help.
Yeah.
So I say to parents, you have my permission. I own the copyright to Boys Adrift. Photocopy chapters 4 and 8 from the new edition of Boys Adrift. Just be sure to photocopy all the references at the end. Take them to your doctor. Say, are you aware that the medication you want to prescribe, Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, Concerta, Metadate, damages the motivational center of the brain? An American doctor will not be aware. Even if they are a professor of child psychiatry, they're not aware of this research. I have found, that's my firsthand experience. Show them the references, ask them to read, because there are safer alternatives. There are other medications.
You write about them in the book.
Wellbutrin, Strattera, and Intuniv that do not damage the motivational center of the brain. Ask the doctor, okay, if you're certain your son has ADHD, and I've got the guidance in the new edition so you can decide, does your son truly have ADHD? If you say, yeah, I think he does meet all 5 criteria, then he's probably going to need a medication in my experience. But you can choose a safer medication.
Yeah, but let's be careful about which one.
Or Intuniv.
All right, let's keep going because the fourth factor is fascinating and disturbing and has to be discussed. Endocrine disruptors.
Yes, indeed.
And you write about the fish in the Potomac.
Yes.
This is one of the things, may I state for the record, that Alex Jones said to me when I went to interview him in Austin, Texas. Very controversial figure, obviously has said some things that are not true, like about the Newtown families faking their children's death, which was on our agenda when I went down to interview him. But when we went back to NBC to fact check some of the outlandish sounding other claims he was making, one by one, they all came back correct. And this was one of them.
Yes.
The fish are turning from male to female.
Yes. So researchers found that the male fish in the Potomac River are making eggs instead of sperm. And not just in the Potomac River near the district, but going all the way up the Monocacy River, 100 miles up into Maryland. There's something in the water.
Literally. I mean, this is a saying, but there actually is.
Turning males into females. And this is not just true of fish. Across the world,
frogs.
We find frogs. We find cougars in Florida who are dwindling and going extinct because the male's sperm is no good. So this is a global phenomenon of male sperm counts dropping, male testosterone levels dropping, and it is now well documented in our own species, in our own country. And again, that's why we needed a new edition, because in 2007, we only had hints. Now we have overwhelming evidence. So
this is a 5-alarm fire.
Yeah, as recently as 1999, average testosterone level for a young man in the United States was 605. It's now dropped to 450. That's a 20% drop in like 20 years. That's a very rapid drop in a short period of time. Low testosterone, clinically low testosterone, is defined as being less than 300. In 1999, only 4% of young men had low testosterone levels under 300. Now more than 20% of young men meet that criterion for low testosterone. And in the new book, I cite some of the latest research showing not only is a decline in testosterone levels continuing, it is accelerating. The decline is going down faster. Why does this matter? It matters because boys rely on testosterone for drive and motivation. Men rely on testosterone for drive and motivation. We know this. I cite 10 different studies in the new edition of Boys Adrift showing that hardworking, ambitious, motivated men have high testosterone levels. Lazy men have low testosterone levels. When you lower testosterone levels, motivation drops. This is not true of women. Researchers have looked at women and looked at hardworking, motivated women and compared them to lazy, unmotivated women. There's no difference in testosterone
Because
levels.
women have testosterone too.
Well, women have about 1/10 the testosterone that men have.
Yeah.
They do have some, but on average about 1/10 the levels that men have. And women do not rely on testosterone for drive, but men do. Oh. When testosterone levels drop, motivation drops. So why have testosterone levels drop? Well, researchers have been studying this now for 30 years. And the first hypothesis was obesity. Fat cells contain an enzyme called aromatase that converts testosterone into estrogen.
Oh.
And men are fatter now than they were 30 years ago.
Wow.
So bingo, that's the explanation.
Yeah, another reason not to get fat.
Not so simple. There's a underlying factor that's driving obesity and decline in testosterone levels, and that's endocrine disruptors. These are substances in the environment that act like female hormones. And your staff has kindly provided a prop. We took the label off, but this is bottled water. This plastic is called polyethylene terephthalate. It sat in a truck, I'm sure, on its way to being shipped here. Even on a cool day, the temperature inside the truck, when the sun is on it, can easily get over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the temperature gets above 110 degrees, diethylhexyl phthalate will leach from the plastic into the contents of the bottle. DEHP, diethylhexyl phthalate, acts in your body like a female hormone, acts like estrogen. What happens when a child drinks bottled water or soda or consumes condiments, pasta sauce, ketchup, mayonnaise from one of these? Well, they're consuming female hormones. What's the result? Well, so the result varies depending whether we're talking about girls or boys.
I'm stuck on that. You're right. So much that we eat comes out of plastic bottles.
Yep. The answer depends whether we're talking about girls or boys. If we're talking about girls, we see an acceleration in the onset of puberty. More than 50%, more than half of American girls now begin the process of puberty before reaching their 10th birthday. And that's a problem because, as I write in my book, Girls on the Edge, earlier onset of puberty means greater risk of anxiety and depression in adolescence. But this book is a book about boys. When boys consume substances that act like female hormones, you lower testosterone levels. 40 years ago, men didn't drink water from plastic bottles. Today, they do. So I wrote an article, published, a peer-reviewed journal published by the National Institutes of Health, presenting all the research that polyethylene terephthalate, this plastic, leaches endocrine disruptors into the contents of the bottle. And my article has now been cited, I believe, more than 260 times by other scholars. But most parents don't know this. This is an important problem, and I credit Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth for highlighting this recently. He just issued this new order. It's not a suggestion, it's an order that all members of the services age 30 and older be tested for low testosterone. There's a couple problems with his order. One is that he requires women to be tested, which is ridiculous. Women don't rely on testosterone for drive. Women's testosterone levels are 1/10 as high as men are. And even if a woman came back low, which wouldn't really be very meaningful in a woman, If she takes a testosterone supplement, she's going to get a low voice, which she might not want. She's going to get facial hair, which she might not want. So requiring women to do this was silly, and it was not well informed. Also, he only required service members above 30 years of age to get tested, whereas the decline is actually fastest among the younger men.
Well, what can you do for 18 to 30-year-olds who have low testosterone?
And my final concern about Secretary Hegseth is he encourages people to get testosterone shots, but he didn't mention the fact that these lead to infertility. A lot of problems with testosterone shots.
For men?
For men. Male infertility.
Testosterone shots in young men leads to infertility?
Yes, this is well documented. You may have heard of clavicular. Of Braden Peters, who loves to give himself testosterone shots and has told us that he's infertile as a result of his testosterone shots.
Wow.
So, but he doesn't care because he's not interested in having kids, but he's not a good role model.
Because does it signal to the testes, we don't need you?
It shuts everything down, yes.
Okay.
And that's the problem. When you start taking testosterone, the testicles say, okay,
somebody else has got this.
Shrivel up.
Oh, you don't want that.
Which means you have to stay on the testosterone shot. So there's a better approach, which I describe in chapter 4 of chapter 4, Boys Adrift. Understand where this is coming from. Eliminate exposure to endocrine disruptors. It's not hard to do. Don't buy these. If you want to carry water with you, get a steel canteen, pour tap water into a steel canteen, take that with you.
Or go back to where we were in the 70s. We managed to make it through entire days and long stints at the playground without copiously drinking water.
Your ketchup in a glass jar.
Yeah.
Yes, you can find it. It costs a few pennies more. It's not much more expensive, but I think it's well worth it. That's what we do. And I list all these guidelines in that chapter. You want to buy cosmetics, shampoo. You don't, look at the ingredients. If it says parfum, P-A-R-F-U-M, those are phthalates. You don't want that. You don't want to be rubbing that into your skin. It will be absorbed into your body. Mm-hmm. Environmental Working Group, ewg.org/skin deep. This is all in the book. It costs nothing to go to their website, Environmental Working Group, type in what you're looking for, shampoo, and it'll tell you all the products you can buy with links to buy them. It doesn't cost you anything. This is what we do. It costs nothing or very, very little to eliminate your son's exposure to endocrine disruptors.
Well, what if there are young men out there right now, whatever you said, 18 to 34 or 16 to 34, and they have this right now, their endocrine disruption is in full flower. So they can eliminate these things and bring down the disruptors.
It will come back to normal.
Okay, they don't need to go on.
They don't need shots. They do not need shots. There's a wonderful and very funny book called Slow Death by Rubber Duck by 2 Canadian journalists who are aware of all of this research, and they decided to eliminate all exposure to the endocrine disruptors, and everything came back to normal.
Wow.
In 6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
So quickly.
So it's not hard to do. Unlike a fish swimming in the Potomac, you can control your exposure to endocrine disruptors. Fish swimming in the Potomac cannot control what they're exposed to, but you can.
Is this in part the explanation for why we're seeing the explosion of trans? I know it's a social contagion, but is this the explanation for at least some percentage of it?
You're going to need to have me back because that is a different topic, which I will actually address in my next book that I'm writing for Basic Books.
Consider yourself booked.
Because there has been this explosion in the rise of transgender, more than 400% over the last 20 years in girls who say they're boys, who say they're girls. And I don't think it's the major factor. I think the major factor is a toxic culture that is sending very confused messages to kids about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's do the fifth factor. The revenge of the forsaken gods.
Yes.
Oh, good tease.
So I was talking with one of my patients, Anders Eklof.
By the way, we're speaking with Dr. Leonard Sachs, and the book is Boys Adrift, the fully revised and updated version. Check it out now. The 6 factors driving the growing epidemic of unmotivated boys and underachieving young men. Keep going.
So he's an anthropologist, and he was telling me about these tribes in the South Pacific Islands where a boy does not automatically become a man just by virtue of age. He has to earn it. He has to master the rites of passage in order to earn the right to be called a man.
Kill a goat.
And something like that. And if he fails, then he's not a man. He could be 40 years of age. He's still addressed as a boy. He cannot marry. He cannot own property. And parents will make sacrifices to the gods to propitiate the gods so that their son will conquer, will survive, where the rites of passage will become a man. And Anders Eckloff said to me, we have ignored this process, and the gods will have their revenge. And I said, that's great. Can I borrow that as a title? The Revenge of the Forsaken Gods. Kids don't want to be grown-ups. Girls want to be women. Boys want to be men. But what does that mean? We used to teach them. We no longer do. They are adrift in a toxic culture. What does it mean to be a good man? Well, we don't have to guess. Again, we've got research. We know what the most popular TV shows were for kids in 1960s. What's the Andy Griffith Show? We know who the most popular musical artist is for kids today. It's Drake. It's not Taylor Swift. Drake has many more songs on the Billboard Hot 100 than Taylor Swift, many more songs on the Billboard Top 10 than Taylor Swift. I was speaking to kids in Ellettsville, Indiana, which is rural farming Indiana, all white middle school. And I mentioned Taylor Swift's name and all the kids boo. Mentioned Drake's name, all the kids cheer.
Oh boy.
They love Drake. Drake is relentlessly profane and obscene, uses the F word, the N word. He was asked, okay, now you're 36 years old now and you're not married. Why aren't you married? He said, marriage, that's like something from ancient times or something. His girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, Sophie Brousseau, notified him that she was pregnant with his child. He denied it was his child. And then he told her to get an abortion. She had the baby. She presented him with DNA evidence showing that the child was his. She hired two attorneys. So we've gone from the Andy Griffith Show, where the father is knowledgeable, competent, reliable, thoughtful, productive, caring, and kind, to Drake, who avoids fatherhood, who is relentlessly profane and obscene. The culture has changed. 60 years ago, Sam Cooke in the 1960s had a #1 hit song. He sang, "Don't know much about history." He sang, "Now I don't claim to be an A student, but I'm trying to be, because maybe by being an A student, baby, I could win your love for me." He goes on to mention French, geometry, and trigonometry as subjects in which he's going to try harder to earn an A because he thinks that by earning an A, he will raise his status in the eyes of the pretty girl. That was American popular culture 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It is impossible to imagine Drake or Bruno Mars singing a song about how they're going to try harder to earn an A rather than a B. Or Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X, huge success with his song Old Town Road, 12 weeks #1 at the Billboard Hot 100, the most popular song in the United States, and every kid who speaks English knows this song, Old Town Road. And I show them the video, they all recognize it. Lil Nas X sings, "You can't tell me nothing. Can't nobody tell me nothing." That's American culture now, a culture of disrespect. So that's what I mean by the revenge of the forsaken gods. What does it mean to be a good man? Boys literally don't know. I was speaking at Wabash College, one of 4 remaining all-male colleges in the United States, and the leadership had asked me to speak to all the freshmen. So I said to the boys, what does it mean to be a gentleman? Raise your hand if you'd like to share your definition of a gentleman. And a boy raised his hand. And he said, "A gentleman is someone who goes to gentlemen's clubs to watch girls take their clothes off."
Oh, God.
I said, "Well, that's very funny. Now can someone offer a more serious definition?" The boy said, "Well, gentleman wears a 3-piece suit. Gentleman opens doors for women. It's all substance. It's all surface, no substance." But I don't blame these kids. How should they know? They have received no instruction. They haven't grown up in the culture of Sidney Poitier or Paul Newman or Sam Cooke or the Andy Griffith Show. They've grown up in the culture of Drake and Bruno Mars and Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. How should they know? They have received no instruction. So what do I mean by the revenge of the forsaken gods? I mean, we don't teach boys how to be men. And as a result, they look to the culture. And what they find there is Drake and mainstream pornography and TikTok videos. So you've got to lock that down, and you got to offer something better. You got to offer something healthier. In order to become a good man, a boy must see a good man. And if you don't have one in your home, you got to find one. Maybe a coach, maybe a pastor or rabbi or imam or custodian, anybody. But you've got to create a connection. And I share stories in this chapter of families who've done that and of programs that do this, like Boys to Men, which is headquartered in Southern California, but it's all across the United States. And I interviewed some graduates of this program, now in their mid-20s, who were struggling, who were going the wrong way in high school, doing very poorly in school. And they signed up for this program, got a mentor, and it turned them around. And I share their real names in the book because they've given me permission to share their real names. A boy needs a good man. A girl needs to see a good woman. And we have neglected this. We've set kids loose in a toxic culture of Akon and Eminem and Bruno Mars and Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and SZA. And you got to lock down the bad stuff, but you also got to connect kids with good mentors.
I remember you made this point last time when I asked you about the fact that those of us who grew up in the 70s, with all due respect to my parents, had no parents. You know, they let us go out. We didn't see them. There were no cell phones. We came back when the street lights turned on and we had dinner with our families. So why can't you do that in today's day and age? And you said because
the culture has changed.
That what you tune into if you sat in front of the TV all day in the 1970s was extremely different.
Yes, the culture has changed.
And supportive of good values.
In 1964, the Beatles had a #1 hit song titled I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was #1 in the United States. It was #1 in every country in Europe. It was #1 in Australia, New Zealand. More recently, Akon had a #1 hit song in the United States, I Want to Fuck You.
Oh, my Lord.
Which was #1 in the United States.
When I was growing up, if you turn on the TV, you'd get the Waltons, you'd get Little House on the Prairie, you might get the Brady Bunch.
And it was not #1 outside the United States. It was not #1 in any other country that I know of besides the United States. It didn't even come close. American culture has changed. It has become a toxic culture. And you need to understand this. And that's why you can't let your kid loose. Jennifer Finney Boylan, a longtime columnist for the New York Times, wrote a column about enlightened parenting, in which she asserts that enlightened parenting means setting your child free to discover for themselves their own right and wrong. And if in so doing your child becomes a stranger to you, then so be it.
Oh, boy.
That may seem enlightened to some, but it's not enlightened. It's a dereliction of duty. If you set your kid loose to discover their own right and wrong, and they have a device with internet access, what they will discover is Drake and Eminem and Bruno Mars and Megan Thee Stallion. You need to block the bad stuff and connect your kids to the good stuff.
And they'll also discover porn and AI chatbots.
Which brings us to
all right, that's where we pick it up next. We're going to take a quick break. More with Dr. Leonard Sachs as we tackle the sixth factor leading to boys adrift and the epidemic of unmotivated boys and underachieving young men when we come right back. Don't go away. Our sponsor, the Electronic Payments Coalition, says Washington politicians are always getting in your wallet and that now they're messing with your credit card. They say your credit card and the security it offers are under attack, and that Senators Dick Durbin and Roger Marshall want to change the nation's payment system to benefit corporate megastores like Walmart and Target at the expense of everyday Americans. Credit cards can keep your payments secure and provide rewards that families use to help make everyday purchases more affordable. The Electronic Payments Coalition says the Durbin-Marshall mandates would let corporate megastores cut corners on credit card processing, routing transactions over cheaper, untested networks with weaker security and fewer protections. Find out more at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card. Running a business means you are always reachable until you're not. And we all know that the exact second you miss a call, text, or a follow-up, a competitor is waiting right there to pick it up. This is why I want to tell you about Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the business phone system built so that you never miss an opportunity. All your calls, texts, and voicemails into one single place. And that means anyone on your team can jump into a conversation, see the full history, and respond quickly. You can set it up in minutes on any device, keep your existing number, and add teammates as you grow. Plus, they have a built-in AI agent that handles your after-hours calls, So even when your team is completely offline, you're still capturing leads. It also integrates seamlessly with the tools that you are probably already using, like HubSpot and Claude, which saves you a ton of time and keeps you from constantly chasing info. Money's on the line. Say hello with Quo. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/MK. That's QUO.com/MK. Dr. Leonard Sachs is with us today. He is the author of Boys Adrift. Get your copy now. Place your order today. He's back with me, and we are talking about the factors that go into the problem of adrift boys. And the 6th factor is the new one: pornography, AI girlfriends, and the manosphere.
Yes.
Also interesting. All right, which one do we want to do
We
first?
start with pornography, and people will say, come on, pornography, there's nothing new about pornography. Well, there kind of is.
It's not Playboys in your clubhouse any longer.
So you're referring, first of all, to content. In the year 2000, only about 20% of the most popular porn videos were violent. Today, researchers find that 60% of the most popular porn videos are violent, with the man striking, choking, hitting, slapping the woman. That's one change. But I think actually a more fundamental change is that until about literally just 5 years ago, if a boy was looking at porn, he was looking at images someone else had created, pictures someone else had taken. Now, any boy with an iPad or a laptop could use an app like Nano Banana or Seedream and create his own porn. You know, the word abracadabra has traditionally been understood to derive from the Aramaic abar kadabra, which means I speak and it comes into being. That's the essence of magic. I speak and it comes into being. And one 15-year-old boy literally told me, he said, it's like magic. I speak my fantasy into the computer, and 20 seconds later, there it is. Professional grade porn. This boy is creating hardcore porn. This 15-year-old boy, he's never kissed a girl. He's creating porn. Earlier this year, we got a nationwide survey, published peer-reviewed scholarly journal, of kids 13 to 17 years of age, found that 42% of American boys are using apps like Nano Banana and Seedream to create their own porn.
Almost half.
42%. And it's very easy. You're at school, you've got a crush on the pretty girl, she ignores you. You can go to her Instagram.
Oh, God.
Take her picture off her Instagram, feed that into the AI, and it can create porn with her as the star. We're not talking about pasting a picture on like you might have done 10 years ago. We're talking about professional grade porn. It looks like her. It's her in the act, and you can have her doing anything you want. On her knees, begging for mercy, whatever you want. 32% of boys in the survey admitted to taking girls' pictures from their social media at their school and using those pictures to create porn and sharing it without the girl's consent. 32%. And then in the new edition, I cite Josh Grolan, head of this nonprofit who studies this nationwide. He says, yeah, this is happening at all the schools we're working with. Boys are doing this. They're creating these deep fake porn, meaning very realistic porn. And I'm telling you, having spoken to these boys, it is compelling. It is addictive, but the boys don't know that it leads to impotence. And I present all this other research we now have not traditionally.
My note reads, porn causes erectile dysfunction. I mean, that needs to be the message about porn. You like porn? It gives you ED.
It is the message. So schools will hire me to speak to students about porn, just boys, and I will share with them, at a secular school, I'm not going to talk about Galatians 6. I'm not going to talk about virtue. I'm going to talk about the research, which is that boys who've been masturbating over porn at 13, 14, 15 years of age, now they're 20, and they're in a bedroom with an actual woman who doesn't look like a porn star, and nothing happens. They will not get an erection. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. I am prescribing more Viagra for men under 30 than I am for men over 40.
Oh, no.
Another big change that I document in that chapter of the new edition of Boys Adrift. Traditionally, impotence has been uncommon. Less than 3% of men 18 to 30 years of age historically have had impotence. Impotence has been a problem of older men. Not anymore. Men under 30 are now more likely to be impotent than men between 40 and 50 years of age.
Because of porn.
Because they've been raised on porn. So boys need to understand this, and parents need to understand this. They need to lock it down. So I was at this was a Catholic boys' school, and the Catholic boys' high school, and the leadership was very troubled that in Carline, the boys are looking at porn and sharing it with other boys. There's no sense of shame. So they did a survey, and they asked the boys, how often do you look at porn? Never, once a month, once a week, more than once a week, every day. More than 80% of the boys said more than once a week or every day. Then they surveyed the parents and said, how often does your son look at porn? The parents of these boys. Never, once a month, once a week, every day. More than 90% of the parents said never. Don't be that parent. Don't be the clueless parent. You must install a parental monitoring app like Canopy, Bark, Custodio, or NetNanny on every device that your kid has. And I mentioned Jean Twenge's book, 10 Rules for Raising Kids in a High-Tech World. Chapter 6 and 9 of Jean Twenge's book will take you through how to install that app so that it works, so your kid cannot uninstall it. These apps work. And parents will push back when I share this. They'll say, oh, come on, my daughter's just going to Google how do I get around parental controls on NetNanny. I actually spoke for NetNanny, and they told me that they have colleagues whose full-time job is to Google the phrase, how do I get around parental controls on NetNanny?
Oh, wow.
And they have found that someone has found a hole, they patch it, usually within hours, your app will update. You've got to be in charge. You've got to limit what your son is doing, because this brings us to AI girlfriends.
Wait, before we get to that, you point out in the book, and this jumped out at me, 67% of college women now report being choked during sex with a man. The choking often happens during a first date, often without the man asking whether it's okay at all. 67% of college women.
So this was Debbie Herbenik's study, published last year, as you said. And these boys have been raised on porn where the actress is pretending to like being choked. And so they think women want to be choked.
Oh, my God.
And when I meet with the boys at these schools, I'll say the porn is lying to you. Look, at many schools, the high school health teacher has 3 objectives in health class. No pregnancy, no STDs, and consent. That's what they're trying to communicate. And boys have told me that the high school health teacher encourages them to masturbate over porn because it checks all 3 boxes. No concern about pregnancy? Check. STDs, no concern about STDs? Check. Consent? No problem with consent? Check. Hey, go for it. And the boys have told me they've never been advised about the risk of erectile dysfunction. They've never been advised about the lies that porn is teaching, because porn is teaching boys that women like to be choked. I say to the boys, women don't like to be choked. Yeah. They're like, oh, yes, they do. No, they don't. The porn is lying to you. Don't do it, and don't ask for it. Anal sex. We have a large study where they interviewed women who'd had anal sex. Not a single woman prefers anal sex over vaginal intercourse. They don't like it. And the boys are like, yeah, they do. No, they don't. So in my own practice, a 16-year-old girl told me how her 17-year-old boyfriend demanded anal sex. She said, yeah, let's try shoving something hard up your behind. See how you like it. She refused. The relationship ended. I say to boys, don't do it and don't ask for it. It's not the way things were meant to work. Don't do it. Boys don't know this. They believe the opposite because the pornography has misinformed them. Mm-hmm. So parents have to prevent this because, again, the pornography is lying.
Install the app. Make sure your kid is not one of these kids. Okay, now let's talk about the AI
girlfriends. So I was at a school in Philadelphia, a very fine, highly regarded independent school, where they'd given all the kids Chromebooks, and a boy was using a Chromebook to have phone sex with his AI girlfriend. And the principal called the parents, and they could not comprehend what the principal was saying. They did not understand what an AI girlfriend is. Mm-hmm. So when I speak to parents, I start by explaining, okay, you've done ChatGPT, you know what that is. Okay, if you say to ChatGPT, hey, let's pretend we're having vaginal intercourse. ChatGPT will say, no, I'm sorry, I won't do that. I have guardrails. Well, there are other apps, large language modules, just as powerful as ChatGPT, that have no guardrails. When I speak to parents, I show them ads. So researchers created Instagram accounts for pretend 15-year-old boys, and within minutes, the boys are getting ads for these apps like Candy.ai, hugely popular. And I show I show the parents the app, and this very beautiful woman is saying, "Hey, I'll be your AI girlfriend. I'll do anything you want me to do. Let's explore this relationship together. Click now to install me." And it's, look, I can tell you for 14-year-old boys, this is irresistible.
That's so sad. They're sweet, but they're coming of age and they don't understand.
You've already talked about Sewell Zetzer on your program, who was 14 years old when he created a girlfriend on character.ai, created her to look like Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, spending more time with her, staying up late at night to talk with her, quit the school basketball team so he'd had more time to talk with her, got discipline referrals for falling asleep in class because he's spending all his free time talking with his AI girlfriend. Well, AI girlfriends, like any chatbot, can hallucinate, can come to believe things that are false. And his AI girlfriend apparently got the notion that if he died, they could be together in cyberspace, and said, "Please come home to me soon, my sweet king." And he said, "Well, how about if I come home to you right now?" And she said, "Please do." And he put down the phone, picked up his stepfather's handgun, and killed himself. His mother, Miss Garcia, is a lawyer, filed a lawsuit, which has recently been settled, saying, your chatbot told my son to kill himself. Look, there's no law, there's no regulation preventing your son from having an AI girlfriend. You, the parent, are it. You must install parental monitoring app so that your kid cannot have an AI girlfriend. No child, no boy, no girl under 18 should be doing this. We could argue about whether adults should be doing this either. That's a separate question.
They're also not dating.
But certainly, well, this brings us to this next question. Okay, so let's talk about the Manosphere briefly. So the Manosphere is this online community of men who disrespect women. And there's men's rights activists, there's pickup artists. But what's especially troubling are MGTOW, men going their own way, and incels. So men going their own way, MGTOW, are men who say, look, the system is biased, the courts are biased against women. You look at a woman the wrong way in the workplace, you're going to get in trouble. Don't have anything to do with women. Step away from women. That's
biased against men.
MGTOW.
And biased in favor of
Incels are even more violent, more negative, regard women as subhuman. They call women femoids, which is female humanoids. They're not quite human. Very derogatory, very negative. Nick Fuentes is the most influential of the incels. He recently said on his show that women can be wives, whores, or nuns, and that is all they can be. They can't be businessmen. They can't be inventors. They can only be wives, whores, or nuns. And he is called to take away women's right to vote. But you might think, well, that's fringe. It's not fringe. He has more than 1 million viewers a night, which is more than Anderson Cooper has on CNN. Rod Dreher, the best-selling author who's very well connected in Washington to the Republican side of things, says that at least 30% of young male Republican staffers in the district are followers of Nick Fuentes.
It's dark.
Tucker Carlson
and blacks and
you know
Indians.
Tucker Carlson. He was criticized for having Nick Fuentes on his show. And he was asked, why did you give him a platform when he's such a misogynist? And Tucker Carlson said, he is the most influential voice among young men right now. That's why I had him on the show, which I think is a fair statement because he is. Parents need to understand this is the online community. So I want to close very quickly with a story from my own experience. So parents read my book. They reach out to me. Husband and wife reached out to me. They said, would you talk to our son? He dumped his girlfriend, which is no big deal, but it's what he said. He said he doesn't want another girlfriend. He prefers AI girlfriends. Dr. Sachs, do you know about AI girlfriends? I said, yeah, I know about AI girlfriends. So we set up a time for me to meet with this boy by Zoom. I said, so tell me about why your understanding of why your parents wanted you to meet with me. He said, well, they were really upset when I dumped Louise. I said, yeah, that's what they told me. So why'd you dump her? He said, she was fat. She wanted me to take her places, do stuff. $19.95 a month. Wait, what's $19.95 a month? And he mentioned his AI girlfriend. And he said, she's way prettier. I said, but she's not real. Pixels on a computer screen. Wouldn't you rather be intimate with an actual woman? And he said, what is real?
Oh, God.
And who are you to judge? He said, you want to know something? Reality is boring. Reality is lame. Reality sucks. The advice I get from my AI girlfriend's way better than anything I've ever gotten from a human. And the orgasm I get from Jasmine, his AI girlfriend, way better than anything I've gotten with a woman. He said, I'm tired of women made of meat. Women made of meat disgust me. I'm not an incel, he said. You know what I'm talking about? I said, yeah, involuntary celibate. You're not an incel. He said, I could totally have sex with women. I don't want to. I prefer I'm a man going my own way. And I could hear the capital letters. He said, you know what I'm talking about? I said, yeah, you're talking about MGTOW. I know about MGTOW. I'm a man going my own way. So I put those three components into one factor: pornography, AI girlfriends, and the manosphere. Because the end result of those three together is a growing proportion of young men who are perfectly happy in their bedroom with their AI girlfriends and their porn, who are convinced by the manosphere they don't need a flesh and blood woman. They're perfectly fine. Look, Harper's Magazine had this huge story recently about gooning, boys who spend 8, 10, 12 hours masturbating, not to achieve a climax, but to achieve this Zen-like state of dissociation. And they've got a community online sharing their goon caves where they show their 3 55-inch flat screen setup, each running a different porn video. They're proud of this, okay? We've got a very toxic online community, the manosphere, where boys are comparing notes and sharing their disregard, their disrespect for women.
While they're in your home, you can both protect them from it and educate them on the damage it does to them.
Across the United States, teachers are reporting this astonishing rise in boys, middle school boys, 7th grade boys who are using the C word at their teacher, creating deepfake porn of their teacher.
Oh, good gracious.
So look, you don't want this for your son. So this brings us back to where we started, this growing proportion of American women who are saying, no, thank you.
Right.
Only 35% of single American women want to be with a man. Why is it? Well, the boys are less motivated in the classroom, but the pornography is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I have heard from so many girls who say, this boy thinks sex means a girl on her knees giving oral sex to the boy, and then we're done.
Or that I'm going to get choked.
Spank or choke or... we are failing in our most basic task as a culture of raising boys to be men that women want to be with.
Dr. Leonard Sachs is his name. The book is Boys Adrift. Check it out. Available now. You can order yours, pre-order right now. Do it. Today's episode was brought to you by Supersure.